Welcome back, everyone. Lake Lewis Show here on Sports Journey. As we always do over the past few weeks, we bring in a fellow who really needs no introduction with us, none other than Richard Quinones. And he comes on, we talk a little bit of boxing, but as I've always told you, this guy and me, we go way back when he was one of the top hosts in the tri-state area, covering all of sports for the Philadelphia, South Jersey scene, also New York. So let's bring him in now. Q, what's going on, man?
What's going on, Lake? How's everything?
I can't complain. I can't complain at all. You know, life's good. It's hot down here. Hey, I grew the beard back. I thought you should know that.
Wait, listen, that's good to know, but you know what? I'm sure it's not as hot down there as it was last night in that finals game.
Listen, no pun intended with the heat. LeBron James is taking some heat right now, and I think it's unfair because, you know, we're talking about the best player in the NBA today, and we're talking about one of the most physically imposing players to have ever played the game. And when the air condition goes out in the building, which it did last night in San Antonio, you saw it affect the quality of the game. Guys were fatigued. Guys were hot. Even the fans were hot. You know, is this unfair that people are jumping on him now, calling him weak and you know, soft right now?
No, I don't think that criticism warranted. I know they're going to look at Michael Jordan in the flu game and Isaiah limping around on 1 foot and 88 against the Lakers. But let's be honest, LeBron James cramping last night and having to take him out a couple times in the last 7 minutes of that game against San Antonio was not the reason the Heat lost that game. I mean, it really wasn't, to be honest with you. If you would have told me that the Spurs were going to turn the ball over 23 times but yet get 56 points out of Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili, have Danny Green go 0 for, and then all of a sudden look like Bird back there from beyond the arc. I mean, ultimately in that game, the Heat panicked. They relied too much on Dwayne Wade. When LeBron went out, they rushed their shots, and I mean, look, it happens. LeBron's going to come back in Game 2, and he's probably going to drop 35. But Blake, you know this from covering the NBA for years. We've seen LeBron cramp up before in situations, and I don't think it helps him that some of the players we're talking about when they played in Europe or when they played at Duke and places that didn't have air conditioning, so to speak. But he's still the best player on the planet, and he cramped up. I mean, that we've all played sports. We played at a high level. You and I played college ball. So when you cramp up, that really, those muscle spasms, that really takes a lot out of you. So I don't think the criticism's warranted at all.
Yeah, you know, and as you said before, man, you know, people just like to hate on the best, and you know, he's the face of the NBA right now. I'll say this. It didn't just affect him. It affected a lot of people out there last night. And, you know, it was almost a situation where in the back of my mind I was wondering if maybe the NBA, believe it or not, may call the game, not so much because of the players, but because your fans. Now, there was one telling image that was there where there was a young lady that was holding her daughter, and the baby was obviously asleep. She's probably about 2, 3. She was sleeping. But I'm just thinking to myself how uncomfortable that may be as a parent. With me being a parent, you know, you would have contemplated, you know, do you stay, do you go? Obviously, it's the finals. Everyone's excited. I actually do think it made a little bit of an element last night. It kind of reminded you and myself, the old timers here, as far as the old Boston Garden when the Celtics used to play, and they would make sure it was hot in there for their opposing teams. Well, look, you look at the game as a whole. I think it's quite obvious, Q, that San Antonio is a much better team than they were last year when, by all intents and purposes, they were right there with Miami to the very end. Their bench last night, Patty Mills, you look at, you know, just some of the guys that they brought in the game, you know, that could come in and spell relief for some of their starters who are aging starters. But it just looks to me that their bench is better than Miami's right now. And I think Eric Spoelstra is going to have to go deep into his bench if they're going to win this series.
I agree. I mean, look, first of all, when you've got Duncan roaming the paint and great pick and rolls, great ball movement, he finishes with 21 and 10. But you mentioned that bench. Look, Diallo only gave the Spurs 2, but he gave them 10 rebounds. He had 6 assists. He hustled on a couple plays to keep some plays alive for Danny Green to knock down big shots. I mean, Marco Bellini, he pours in 16. I think he had 10 or 11 assists. So even Ginobili at times, who will take that role off the bench and give way to a guy like Danny Green. The Spurs are a very well-rounded team, and I think the most interesting aspect of the Spurs, and really the big three, over the last 10, 11, 12 years is that, they just overcome adversity.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, this is a team that won 62 games this year.
Yeah.
So they're 32-9 at home. They've got guys that you can plug in. Pop has a great system, and I thought this series was going to go 7. I still like the Heat in 7, but when you have Duncan, who really uncontested a couple layups inside with 21 and 10, and forget about the air conditioning failure. I mean, the bottom line is it was a good team effort, and for the Heat, you have to have some guys other than LeBron at times step up, and we just don't see that all the time. I mean, Wade had 19, Bosh had 18, but they were like a quiet, if you understand, a quiet 19 and 18. So
they're
going to have to make adjustments.
Yeah, and a lot of Bosh's points came early in the game when he came out, and that seems like their blueprint. They come out and try to get Bosh going before anybody else. If you watch Miami, you notice that he's taking the first 2, 3, 4 shots of the game, get him going, and then LeBron's going to get his always throughout the game. But then second half, it's about getting D Wade going. I agree with you. I just don't think Miami has enough firepower. They're going to have to win this series on defense. And if you're having 90-point games, you're not going to beat San Antonio, because that means that they're probably sharing the ball, and you have 4, 5, 6 guys now possibly getting in double digits. So very telling point on that. I will say this. This is what we've always wanted, Q. I mean, this is what, as I keep saying, the old timers like us, we remember these series every year where it was, the Lakers and Boston or Detroit and the Lakers. Chicago, and you remember seeing Chicago, Utah. You remember seeing like series as far as trilogies and things of that nature. And I think we're seeing now clearly the two best franchises in the NBA over the last, for San Antonio, clearly over the last decade, but Miami over the last half decade. I mean, this is their 4th NBA Finals in a row. You can't knock that. My question to you is this: whoever wins this series right now, will it be more of, if San Antonio wins this series, does this cement Tim Duncan's greatness as perhaps the greatest 4 of all time? Or if Miami wins, does this cement LeBron James now as one of those top 2, 3 greatest players of all time?
I think it's a great question. I've always believed that Tim Duncan. I was looking at Duncan's stats the other day. It really is amazing.
Yeah.
Because he has, I think, close to 25,000 points, but it'll be another title under his belt. I'm sure with the start last night, he might go on to say win the NBA Finals MVP if it plays to form, if the Spurs do win. So I've never questioned Duncan. I think he's one of the all-time greats at his position. As far as LeBron, I think people are going to always measure LeBron to number 23, and they're waiting for LeBron to get 6 titles. But the bottom line is, you're right, this is their 4th straight finals appearance. This is LeBron's 4th finals, right? If we talk about with him being with the Cleveland Cavs. So, and look what he did with that team. He took them really nowhere into the finals with a bunch of nobodies. I just think LeBron James is just on another level when it comes to talent and where he is when it's going to be all said and done. And he just physically gifted, and he can do things. Look, he's a great defensive player.
Absolutely.
And he's a great scorer. Magic was a great point guard and leader. Magic didn't have a perimeter shot. He had to develop that set shot. Magic was awful defensively. Jordan defensively came into his own later in his career. He worked on a shot. LeBron James has just kind of morphed into that all-around great player. If he wins another one, then you certainly have to start bringing him into discussion with Jordan, where it's a 1A and then maybe a very distant 1B. But now he's relatively young. He gets a couple more. Then you have to, when it's all said and done, I do believe he can be considered the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, I mean, and it pains us. I mean, let's face it, when you grow up in a generation and you see a certain person be great, that's what you remember, and you remember that, and you hold that to anything. It's just like, our parents' generation talking about Oscar Robertson and Wilt Chamberlain and those guys. Sure. They truly feel like they can compete today, and maybe they could, not knocking them. But when you look at LeBron and you look at his size and you look at everything that he can do with the basketball, I've said this before, and I have no problem saying this. I still feel like Jordan's the greatest until somebody takes that from him. but I do feel like LeBron is the greatest overall talent the league has ever seen, and I'll stick to that. I think that, the situation last night means nothing, because if LeBron comes back and for me, I don't think he has to come back and do anything to prove anything to me, but to those naysayers out there, as you said, Q, he's going to come back, drop 40.
You know why? Lake?
Yeah.
And not to cut you off, because you make a great point. I'm going to tell you why, because everyone remembers Jordan getting in fight with Kerr. Jordan with the flu game when he had over 100 and he pumped in 36, 37 against Utah.
Yeah.
Jordan, willing the Bulls to stay in series with against the Pistons. The 63 and 86 against the Celtics. That cut your throat mentality. That's the Jordans, the Bryants, the Birds, and that's why I think a lot of younger fans don't really understand the history of the game. They look at LeBron, the guy punked out. He had to be carried or helped off the court because he got cramps. They're so used to that 15, 20 years ago when the old school guys around the barbershop would say, well, I remember the day Jordan couldn't even walk. It was like, Winslow in that AFC playoff game years ago, right?
Yeah,
in Miami.
Exactly.
They remember that image. You just, to me, LeBron James will be an all-time great. There's no debate. Now, you can always debate if he's going to be better than Jordan, but if he wins 6 or 7, then guess what? He's better than Jordan.
Yeah, if he wins 6 or 7, that's the bottom line. And I'll say this. Last time I looked, Michael Jordan on his best day, build-wise, was what, 215, 220 tops, if ever.
How to develop it.
Yeah, if ever. LeBron James is a guy that's pushing 280, folks. I mean, you're talking about a cramp on him is a broken leg on most people. So, for him, for a guy that is ultra competitive, for a guy like that, let's face it, this isn't the old LeBron. This isn't the LeBron that people thought, would back down from the big shot. No, this is the guy right now. This is the guy that has carried this franchise over the last 2 years. Everyone knows what he's capable of doing. And I just to wake up, this morning, Q, and to see all these things out there, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, we got a lot of haters out there. You and me deal with it every day. But it's just sad, man. I mean, you're forgetting this guy's greatness. This isn't the NBA All-Star game we're talking about. This is the finals against a world-beating franchise in San Antonio who are going to come at you. So let's just enjoy this for what it is. This is what the NBA needed. I think if you're Adam Silver right now, you've walked into the best job on the planet, literally.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this real quick before we move on. Folks, talking with Rich Quinones. This guy's doing some wonderful things out there in the world of sports. One of the upcoming boxing analysts out there. He and myself, we broadcasted a couple weeks ago a world championship event right here in Northern Virginia. Tori Nelson defended her title against the legendary Mia St. John, and Q blew me away with his play-by-play skills. Obviously, I knew the guy was a great sportscaster, but I mean, wow, it took me to another place with this broadcast. And guess what, folks? You can see that on Sports Journey. So we're going to have that up for you. You can actually watch the full fight and how it was called by Q, myself, Chris Wilson, former Washington Redskin, who's now with the BC Lions in Canada. Told me to tell you what's up, Q, by the way. You can check that out. So real quick before we move into boxing, if this series goes 7, and obviously if it goes 7, that means it's a very competitive series, which we all think it will be. Where do you put this bio, so to speak? Where do you put this Miami San Antonio up against some of the great, back-to-back series that were out there?
I mean, honestly, if it goes 7, last year to me was absolutely epic, and then that bounce of that ball to Allen in the corner, and then the block with Bosch and whatnot. I'm a historian like you are of the NBA, so it's rare that we get two teams that play the back-to-backs. I mean, we saw it with the Bulls and the Jazz in 97, 98. You can go back and the Celtics and the Lakers. I just think because they're great dynasties and the Spurs have meant so much to the NBA for such a long time that I would put this right up there. I mean, I would really put this right up there with some of the all-time great finals rivalries because it's very rare in sport that you get to see two teams meet again. I mean, through the 80s, there were only a couple teams. It was the Lakers, it was the Celtics. They were in the finals, it seems, and the Sixers here and there every single year.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I go back to what you said. I think it's great for the NBA. The ratings are going to be off the roof, off the chart, especially if it goes 7. And, we can see this again next year. You just never know. I think right now we enjoy it, and if it goes 7, they will be 2 epic NBA finals.
Yeah, not too often can you see 2 series where you can say perhaps the 2 greatest players at their respective positions ever, at the 4 and at the 3.
Hall of Famers in this series.
Absolutely, several Hall of Famers in this series, maybe 5 or 6, but we'll enjoy this as it continues to play out. Game 2 tomorrow night in San Antonio. So let's move on real quick, as I know time is precious with you right now. You're the boxing guy. For everybody out there that doesn't know, like I said, this guy is doing some wonderful things. Go Fight, live. He does some stuff there, but he's really helping build our brand here at Sports Journey with our boxing as well. There's some intriguing matchups coming up here, and you have some names that a lot of people are familiar with. If you're diehard boxing fans like us, Miguel Cotto going up against Martinez. My question to you is, had this fight been 5 years ago, would it have been even bigger?
I think it's bigger now.
Wow.
I think it's bigger now, and you're referring tomorrow night, Sergio Martinez against Miguel Cotto for the WBC middleweight title. I'm going to tell you why, because Cotto is trying to cement his legacy as one of the all-time great Puerto Rican fighters. And you look at the island of Puerto Rico, and they produce guys like Wilfredo Benitez, Wilfredo Gomez, Tito Trinidad. Those guys have won titles in 3 weight classes. They become legends. Benitez was a champ at junior welterweight, junior middleweight. Gomez collected titles at featherweight, junior lightweight. And Tito, who's going to join these guys in International Hall of Fame in Conestoga, New York, Sunday, won belts, I believe, junior middleweight, and welterweight. So, you have Cotto now trying to win a another title in a 4th class. So he's a 3-division title holder: junior welterweight, and junior middleweight, and he's going in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best body punchers I've ever seen up close and personal. He's an absolute beast. And here's another thing. Why this is huge is because this is on the eve of the annual Puerto Rican Day Parade at Madison Square Garden, where we believe there's going to be probably about 23,000 fans.
Wow.
So, yeah, you got a guy that, some of the best fighters have fought at 140, 147, 154. Now you have a guy at 160 that Cotto's taken on, who is really, I also think, an exceptional boxer, and Sergio Martinez. I mean, Sergio Martinez, for a guy that a lot of people think has been around for a long, long time, he's pushing 38, 39 years of age, but this is a guy that's had some absolute wars in the ring against Barker, against Macklin, against Paul Williams was a short fight. Kelly Pavlik, well, I should say that second fight against Paul Williams. At first, he lost the majority decision in 12 rounds back in 2009. So this is going to be, I think, an all-out action fight. I think it's going to be a brawl from the get-go. I think these guys are going to exchange punches. I think this fight's going to last longer than Tori Nelson Mia St. John's fight, but it's definitely going to be great for boxing, and it's a very good card, too, because you also have some other cards coming up on HBO and Showtime later on in the month. But, yeah, this will be a good one. Martinez and Cotto. For Martinez, it's the linear WBC middleweight title.
Yeah, another name that we could mention as far as that Puerto Rican class, the late Hector Camacho. There's so many great boxers that come out of there, very prideful people. And how do I know? Because I'm married to one. And, I remember years ago, going up, not as media, but actually as a fan. I remember going to Madison Square Garden and seeing Tito Trinidad go up against a guy that's very familiar in our stable of business, William Joppy. And it was amazing, Q, as far as the overall just the Puerto Rican flair that was there. Obviously, we're talking New York City, but it was 95-5 in favor of Trinidad. And, so I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting time. I'm going to put you on the spot real quick because I know we got to wrap up. But before we go, give me your prediction of the fight.
I think the fight's going to go to distance. I think Cotto is going to be able to wear down Martinez. I think Cotto is going to be able to slip inside with that jab and maybe disrupt Martinez. Martinez, I think, is a technically sound fighter. I think is a very good fighter, but at times, I think if you pressure him and work the body, and that's exactly what Cotto does, if Martinez backs up and finds himself against the ropes, then Cotto can wear him down, and it could possibly be a stoppage. But I certainly like this one going the distance for 12, and I like Cotto on the scorecards. If Martinez wins it, it's because he's not going to let Cotto manhandle him. He's going to keep his distance,
move around.
He's going to keep his range, and he's just going to consistently pepper Cotto with that reach and those jabs. And, if he can do some damage, so be it. He can touch him up. He can make it interesting. But I got to go with Cotto on this one. I'm just really amazed at what this fighter has done over the last couple of years. And it's great. I mean, you got a Puerto Rican fighter taking on an Argentinian fighter, and you got a southpaw too in Martinez. So I definitely think it'll be fireworks tomorrow night.
All right. Well, look, my friend, I appreciate you joining me. As always, folks, Rich Quinones. You can check out more of the things that he's doing here on Sports Journey. So we appreciate him coming on. Have a good one.
Always a pleasure, Lake. Have a good weekend, pal.
All right.
Homeowners Relief Line can help save your home. We specialize in foreclosure assistance, and that's all we do. If you're behind on your mortgage payments, being threatened with foreclosure, have been denied a loan modification, or been the victim of a predatory loan, it's critical that you call Homeowners Relief Line now. Homeowners Relief Line has a network of attorneys, and our agents are available to speak to you right away. New laws are in effect that may save your home, so call Homeowners Relief Line now.
Attention if you have diabetes.
Hello, I'm Alan Thicke. As the father of a child with diabetes, it's important that I keep up to date with the latest in treatments and technology. That's why I'm happy to tell you about a breakthrough in diabetes care through CCS Medical. You don't need to stick your fingers anymore. This new meter allows you to test on your arm, so it's virtually pain-free. Plus, it uses gold test strips. Real laser-etched gold in every strip provides the ideal testing surface for one of the most accurate readings possible. Best of all, CCS Medical can send you this meter at no cost. With CCS Medical, they deliver your diabetes supplies to your home. They work with Medicare or your insurance to process the paperwork. They even have nurses certified in diabetes available to answer questions. And for a limited time, CCS Medical will also send you a diabetes ID bracelet. All this from a company trusted and recommended by thousands of doctors around the country. Call CCS Medical today.
That's a good pour. Frosty glass. Perfect amount of foam.
Thanks, Coach.
How's your Bloody Mary?
Spicy.
Wings?
Always fresh, never frozen.
All right. Who's the primary on Spider 2Z Snag?
It's the fullback out of the backfield. If he gets jammed, I'm hitting the flanker on a curl route.
You're good.
I know.
Huddle up at Hooters. Why would you go anywhere else, man?